Hello, I'm David Frost. I'm an Emeritus Fellow at Wolfson College, Cambridge, and I've been working on teacher leadership for many years. My title today, Enabling New Teachers to Develop Practice and Become Influential through the Non-Positional Teacher Leadership Approach. I see on the Teach For Kazakhstan website this statement: our program tackles educational inequality by fostering safe, inclusive spaces where every child's dignity and individuality are valued. This is a very clear statement of values. I wonder, does everybody present today share those values? Do you share them? And are you clear about your own moral purpose as a teacher? Michael Fullan has said in his writings about leadership that most teachers become teachers because of their moral purpose. What about you? Why did you decide to become a teacher? I imagine it's because you want to do something good for society, for young people. I hope that's the case. So at first, when you become a new teacher, the challenge seems to be about just how to fit in, how to do what everybody around you is doing, because they seem to be able to be good at it and you feel perhaps insecure and so on. And then beyond that, you find that everything is so time-consuming that the temptation is to just concentrate on efficiency. What's the quickest way to do this? What's the easiest way to do this? And make it all fit in to a busy day. However, if you're really serious about your moral purpose, if you want to realize your moral purpose in action, you have to first learn how to continuously improve your own practice. And secondly, you have to learn how to exercise leadership to develop practice more widely in the school and the system. I think, as teachers, our moral purpose must be about tackling educational injustice, because it seems to me that children the world over are entitled to education. They should be entitled. Kazakhstan is a member state of the United Nations, has been since 1992. And if you look up the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, number 4 says, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. You find that on their website. Sometimes we may be satisfied that because most children are okay, then we don't need to worry. But I suggest this is a better slogan. We are not okay until we are all okay. So let me ask you, do you think every child in your school is fulfilling their potential? What do I mean by potential? It's not just academic achievement. It's also the capacity to learn, learning capacity. It's also well-being. It's also character, citizenship, and many things more. So potential is a broad concept. You have to ask yourself, are some children closer to fulfilling their potential than others? If some are not, I'd suggest that's an educational injustice. Of course, we hear all the time, I have certainly heard in my time in schools, these alibis, these excuses that we can give ourselves for not succeeding to educate certain children. I've heard it say, for example, it's not my responsibility. I'm just here to teach maths. Or the government doesn't provide enough guidance or enough funding or enough training or enough school buildings or enough textbooks, and so on and so on. Sometimes you hear, well, some kids just don't want to learn, as if that's their problem, not mine. And you hear quite often, the kids are so badly behaved, I have to focus on just keeping order. I don't have time to do more than I'm already doing. I think educational injustice has many dimensions. There are many sources of injustice. For example, the issue of access to schooling. Some children find it very hard to get to school. Maybe they're prevented from going to school. In my example here, some children are not allowed to go to school because they're asked to stay at home, look after elderly relatives, work on the farm, something like that. It may be they are from very poor backgrounds, so poverty and socioeconomic disadvantage is a source of educational injustice. Because, for example, some families just don't value education, they don't care about it, and they pass this attitude on to their children. It could be the identity problem. Identity issues, another source of educational injustice. So, for example, some children are autistic and they simply can't fit into school as we ordinarily see that. There are many similar issues for people's identity: language, ethnicity, ability, disability, special educational needs, and so on. System factors. In some systems, there's just not enough school places. I think this probably happens in Kazakhstan sometimes, where the school has to run in several shifts, 2 shifts, maybe 3. I've heard this in many places in the world. And that's very difficult to manage. So a lot of creativity required there. It could be simply pedagogical factors. Now, very often you may think that's the only place that I can make a difference in the classroom with my approach to teaching. For example, if the teachers are just using instructional modes of teaching, children can't reflect on their experience, they find it very difficult to learn. But I suggest that all of these, under whichever heading you look, teachers can still do something creative to make a difference to these matters of educational injustice. So if education really is an entitlement, all of those problems are examples of injustice. And as teachers, if we have a strong moral purpose, then it compels us to address these kinds of issues. I mentioned Michael Fulham before, a really interesting writer on educational leadership. I was very influenced by a paper he wrote many years ago, 1993. And I quote this from it: "Moral purpose without change agentry," rather difficult word to say, "without change agentry is martyrdom. Change agentry without moral purpose is change for the sake of change." So clearly those two ideas, moral purpose and being an agent of change, go hand in hand. So let's think about being an agent of change, a change agent. A change agent is necessarily driven by moral purpose. But you also need, if you're going to be a change agent, you need to draw upon the capacity for agency. What do I mean by agency? This is the innate human capacity to make choices and have an effect on your environment. It is a conscious, knowing thing. You can reflect on it. You can be intentional in those actions to make a difference. This agency is essential to your self-belief, your self-efficacy beliefs. In other words, your own faith in your ability to do something. The non-positional teacher leadership approach rests on these two ideas of moral purpose and agency. They require moral purpose and agency. They draw upon them, but they also they are ignited and mobilized by the program of support, and in turn, the activity of exercising leadership enhances your sense of moral purpose and extends your agency. Can teachers really make a difference? Some people doubt it, but I have lots of evidence to show, gathered over many years. I've been working on this for over 35 years. And we have published a book recently, Teachers and the Practice of Leadership. And there's copious evidence there from all over the world, including Kazakhstan, which go to affirm the statement that teachers, regardless of the extent of their experience, their position, their status, they can exercise leadership to combat educational injustice, especially when they have the right kind of support. So, non-positional teacher leadership. I've been working on it for a very long time, since 1989, in fact. It's basically a strategy to enable teachers to lead change. It started as a collaboration between the university and senior leaders in the school. It became very international from 2008 onwards. Many different partners in different countries getting in touch and wanting to take part and learn about it. My organisation, the HeartsCam Network, became an independent charity in 2012. So we were not then tied to the university or indeed to the local government. And then in 2025, we resolved to give away all our ideas in the form of a book and a lot of materials to help other people support teacher leadership. So our legacy went online, if you like, in 2025. So non-positional teacher leadership is basically a stance, a conviction, if you like, which says that any adult in the school can exercise leadership, whether or not they hold a position of responsibility, whether or not they have substantial teaching experience, whether or not they are fully qualified as teachers. So support for non-positional teacher leadership is appropriate for teachers who have positions, but also teachers who have no position at all. I suggest, and I know from experience, that with the right kind of support, anyone can learn to do it. It's important that we clarify what leadership is. It's not, as a lot of people assume, it's not just a matter of taking decisions and insisting that others abide by them. That's a very outmoded way of thinking about leadership. Gary Yuckel, an American writer, has written about leadership in organizations in general. He talks about it being a process of intentional influence to guide, to structure, to facilitate activities and relationships. And other writers in education, like Leithwood and Reel, for example, again use these terms influence and mobilizing people. So this is very much an important way of thinking about leadership. It's also useful to see leadership as a set of behaviors. For example, influencing and inspiring others, taking the initiative, offering support, provoking reflection, persuading others to participate, and so on and so on. These sort of behaviors are what leadership is made of. If you see it like that, then you can see that anyone in the school is capable of enacting leadership in some way. Anybody, students, teachers, teaching assistants, for example. So let me outline features of a non-positional teacher leadership program of support. First of all, it's really important that it's school-based. It's convenient for the teachers. So it's workshop sessions held at the end of a school day, maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, for example. That's typical in the UK. It's convenient for the teachers. It does not disrupt the students' learning. If you organise it on like a Wednesday afternoon, what happens to the students' learning? So, secondly, it's a group experience. It's not something you should do on your own, online, or something like that. It's a group experience with group sessions, workshop sessions lasting 2 hours. Time to build a sense of community, time to get to know each other within the group, time to really discuss and reflect and engage in activities together. So it needs to be a trusting community where you establish that trust over time. Thirdly, it needs to be well facilitated. Facilitation is an interesting concept. It's quite different to training, it's quite different to instruction. It enables other people to take decisions. So it works well when it's done by experienced teachers in the school. We found in Kazakhstan, for example, that vice principals tend to become facilitators. In the UK, all sorts of different kinds of people have taken on the role, but it's best if it's somebody who is experienced and trusted within the school. It's about empowering and enabling others. It's about using tools by tools. You'll see subsequently, tools is a device, a piece of paper, for example, with a set of questions on it or an example on it, but something that enables people to have a discussion about it and think about what they want to do themselves. Fourthly, the program involves one-to-one tutorials. So facilitators would meet with one member of the group, one at a time, face-to-face, to have maybe 20 minutes discussion, maybe 3 times a year, to talk about that teacher's plans, that teacher's ideas, to ask, so tell me, what are you thinking about what you will do to make a difference? It's supportive, it's not instructional. Fifth, we have found that certification really helps. We have done this for many, many years, and teachers, of course, at first were put off if they were asked to do academic work, but in our system, they are not. They're asked to compile a portfolio of evidence. Evidence as simple as, for example, if they send an email to colleagues to invite them to a meeting to talk about a particular aspect of practice, that email is a piece of evidence that would go into their portfolio. So it's a very straightforward collection of evidence to show what has happened. And that would be assessed by the facilitators using criteria provided. And then it would be moderated by other facilitators in other schools to achieve a certain standard. Lastly, network events. Really important for teachers to be able to meet teachers from other schools, to organise events where maybe teachers from 5 or 6 different schools come together and they lead discussions about their projects, they share what's going on in their project, they engage in discussion, they may come with a device to help other people engage with them and to pose questions for them. The school itself hosting an event. So I'd suggest that a school can be given a checklist that we have in our materials to help them organise such an event. So if we look at these features put together, together they empower and enable teacher-led development projects. That's the nub of it, to empower teachers to lead development projects of their own. Here's some detail about the process that teachers are enabled to go through. First, reflecting on their values and their concerns as an individual. What do I care about? What's important to me? It's a very powerful thing to do. And then to identify from that, identify an aspect of practice that as an individual they would like to develop. And then they're able to consult colleagues in their schools about their concern and about a possible focus for development. This approaching colleagues to ask them what they think is again a very powerful thing to do. Through those conversations, number 4, they clarify the focus and their agenda for change. And they're able then, number 5, to produce an action plan for the development project. The materials they're provided with show them how to do that, give them examples, pro formas, templates, etc. And again, they consult, number 6, they consult their colleagues about their action plan to see whether it's going to be practical, to see whether other colleagues think they can join and help out with this. And so they can then, number 7, lead the project. They engage their colleagues in this process, this collaborative process. I don't mean other people within their support group. I mean teachers external to that support group throughout the school. And they can then, number 8, evaluate the project. They can work out what they're trying to make a difference to and find a way to assess whether it's really working, whether it's making a difference. And number 9, they can share the story about that project. They can practice the story within their support group. They can go to network events to tell the story. They can tell the story within their own school to encourage other teachers. And lastly, number 10, they can put the evidence together in their portfolio, which they have been gathering together over time. They can tidy it up, submit it, and earn their certificate. Let me be clear about what a development project is. This is a project which takes place over time. It has to be a process because you can't simply invent a new practice and kind of implement it. That's a silly idea. A lot of governments think you can implement things, but actually they need to be developed over time. So if you're leading such a process, you invite colleagues to work with you to develop a particular aspect of practice. And then you devise the key steps. What's the first step? Would you, for example, make an announcement in a staff meeting? Would you invite colleagues to a meeting? What would you do? And what would happen after that? So you would plan a process. You'd plan steps. You would perhaps try out new methods, new strategies. You try something, you evaluate it, you try it to improve it, try it again, and so on. You might want to create some new teaching materials, create some guidance, create a tool to help evaluate it, and so on. You manage the process, you steer it in a direction that you think it ought to go in. So this is an example of a project led by a teacher called Harminder in England. I'll just leave you a couple of minutes to read that for yourself. I hope you've had time to read that. Now another project, this time from Elena in Bulgaria. I'll allow you a couple of minutes to read that. And this example is a project led by a teacher, Damili, in Atirau in Kazakhstan. I'll allow you a couple of minutes to read that. Hope you've had a chance to read that one. So what kind of outcomes can we expect from projects that teachers lead with the support of an NPTL program? Well, first of all, improvements in students' learning, the most important outcome. Second, enhanced teacher professionality. Let me just explore that. Very often people use the term professionalism. But I think there's a problem with that. It tends to suggest the idea of being qualified, being regulated, achieving a certain standard of behaviour, and so on. I prefer the concept of professionality because it's about how you construct your professional identity, your values, your concerns, your beliefs, and how you enact those in your practice. So it's your own construction, which I think is a more helpful way to think about it. In our network, we've used this tool to enable teachers to think about their professionality. And we use this idea of, on the one hand, a restricted professionality or an extended professionality. And the idea is that you could say, well, are you very individualistic, or do you see yourself as a member of a learning community? Do you see yourself as being compliant, doing as you're told? Do you see yourself, on the other hand, as being an innovator, having agency? Do you see yourself as being driven by standards, rules, the inspection outcomes? Or do you see yourself being driven by your own principles about education and about your moral purpose and so on. With knowledge, do you see yourself as being trained so you already have the knowledge, or do you see yourself as creating knowledge all the time? Do you see yourself being led, or do you see yourself exercising leadership? So that's what I mean by professionality. Back to my list. You would expect to see changed and improved practices, of course. Extended professional knowledge in the sense that the teacher has more knowledge, but so does the school, because if the teacher has led a project well, the whole school has adopted that practice and learnt from it. And it's also knowledge in the system when teachers share that with other schools. It may result in new or improved structures within the school. This is quite often the case. It may be that the school culture is enriched. In other words, that people within the school find themselves talking to each other more, being more collaborative, more open to change and improvement, and so on. Advocacy and activism. Many teachers who have exercised leadership in this way tend to find themselves wanting to share that with others, to persuade other teachers, perhaps in different countries, about the idea of teacher leadership. And there's many other outcomes that I don't have time to dwell on just now. I said earlier on that in 2025, our organisation decided to create a legacy, to give away our ideas, our intellectual property. So we've created a website. You can see that listed, first of all, www.nonpositionalteacherleadership.com, and you can download free resources from there. The book, of course, that was made as part of our legacy. You can buy it from Routledge, or you can download it from the website. There's also a major guidance book, Information and Guidance. That's a 70-page document which shows you how to support teachers who want to lead. You can download a document that gives you details about how to plan such a program. And you can download the session guides and the tools to run the workshops. All this material is available free under a Creative Commons license, which means that it can be adapted for a particular purpose. So my invitation today is for people to think about how non-positional teacher leadership could be used to support your program, and people who organise that program might want to use all of these materials to help them do that. You go to the website, you find the books section, the resources and books, and there you will see the book that you can download. You also see the information and guidance book, which you see is available in different translations. This is the translated versions we currently have on the site, but there's going to be more. So I understand that further translations have been done. Kyrgyz, Tajik, I believe, Portuguese, and so on. They will join the others shortly, I think. So here is an image of the guidance booklet in Kazakh. But as I say, I believe it's also available in other languages that you may find helpful. The guidance booklet describes a series of sessions. So on the website, there are session by session folders. And in each folder, there's a guide to running a workshop with the tools that go with the activities that the guide outlines. So if you open session 1 folder, you find these tools, numbers 1 to 7. There are various kinds of documents and, for example, an example of a development project, or some PowerPoint slides about a portfolio, and so on. So how might this non-positional teacher leadership approach be used within the Teach for Kazakhstan program? Well, you could have a support group which has people from more than one school. I understand that it may not be appropriate to have a support group within a single school, but perhaps it would be. It may be that because one of you is in a given school, it may be possible to persuade the school to host a group so other teachers from the school could also participate. So there's 2 different ways to do it. There may be others. Of course, it's important to consider the issues. Who would be the facilitator in this case? Would it be somebody from without the school or somebody within the school? In the end, it's sustainable if it's facilitated by people within the school. Of course, the principal has to be consulted. The principal plays a key role in enabling this to happen. I want to close with quoting the final paragraph in our new book. We hope to see many non-positional teacher leadership programs springing up around the world and empowering teachers, regardless of status or formal position, as agents of change. Where this occurs, we believe there will be authentic transformation. We also hope that those who choose to initiate and facilitate such programs will find each other and form a social movement in which they can collaborate and advocate for non-positional teacher leadership. Perhaps then we can show policymakers that the answer to the education crisis lies within the teaching profession. Ultimately, it is teachers who can and will make a difference to what happens in schools. It is they who can and will address the social injustice that children and young people suffer all over the world. Thank you very much for your attention. And as I say goodbye, I want to suggest that one day you might visit Cambridge. There's an image of the University of Cambridge there. And you might want to contact me and talk about coming to visit Wolfson College. We have very nice overnight accommodation at Wolfson College, which I can tell you about if you plan to come in this direction. Thank you very much.